Y'all, y'all, y'all ready for this? Yeah. 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 Hey everyone, welcome to Kempner Sports, and this is it. This is championship video, the show, minor league. We've got two champions right here. Two champions, the best of 2021. Wow, we are something else. Let's just take a moment to brag, right? Welcome, Peter Day, champion of minor league, coming back up to the show. Excited to have you on here. Welcome to the channel.
Thanks, man. You know what? It's funny how it works. Sometimes you don't think you're going to be the champ, and you set yourself up for some playoff success, and it works out for you. Fantasy can go either way, and my last few weeks were spectacular for sure. So I peaked at the right time. Let's just say that.
Exactly. Just got to win 3 in a row. It doesn't matter how it happens. That's kind of how it goes. Okay. Well, actually, let's talk about your journey, for example. But we're going to start with something that I find really interesting, and it's the draft. And I like to go back and look where I drafted teams and players and how my roster came to the forefront. In fact, my team looks completely different than how I draft them. Right? You know me, I'm addicted to trading.
No.
But yours actually looks very similar in many ways. With your first pick, you went just like I had with my strategy of keeping Kelsey. You went Kelsey at 9, and then tell me what happened on the back side of that draft.
Well, you know what's really interesting is the whole tight end first thing, that is not my thing. But this year, with the way everything was going, taking that 9 or 10 pick, you're never really sure what to do there. And so you go, I want to take what I know is going to be good there. And so Kelsey is a secure thing for me. So I was like, I'm going to get points out of that. I'm going to go that way, but that wouldn't be my first choice. If I was picking 7, I would never have gone Kelsey. So it just so happened that we found out a half hour before the draft where we're drafting, and you're going, okay, if this guy goes, Kelsey's in there. Now on the backside, I probably, in hindsight, I would have gone to Eckler. But I did take a shot because Saquon Barkley got passed over by everybody. I thought he's off the injury. They've got a little bit more experience together. Let's see what happens. So I took Saquon Barkley there at 12. And of course, then at that point, you're committed and going, I feel good about these two things, but that's a real wishy-washy one. And I don't pick again until 29. So I hope these two work out here for me.
Right. And consensus, Barkley was being taken in the first or second round by experts, and we've realized that we're as much of experts as they are. They are as right and wrong as we have been over the years.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have said that was a horrible pick. Of course, hindsight 2020, Eckler, you being a Chargers fan, that would have been really great. Yeah. So going back around the other side, you got a couple studs, and neither one were running backs.
Yeah. Once I had taken that, again, the running backs started disappearing off the board, of course, which is fairly typical. But I was super surprised and super lucky and blessed that at 29, Justin Jefferson was still there. I think the beginning of the year, he was like ranked 20 or 21 or something like that. And so I thought, you know what, if this is the way this is going, I want to start with the 4 best players that I can. So I actually would say that in about round 3, or, as I was getting ready to pick round 3, my draft strategy was changing. I was like, oh, snap, there goes, oh, no. So then I'm looking, and these 2 next players were there. And I would have taken either one of, I would have taken them anyway. So that was really important to me. So Justin Jefferson hanging around at 29, and that was actually probably the easiest pick of my draft.
Right. So it went Jefferson, and then went Waller, which I was surprised he lasted that long. And then Allen Robinson. Thank God he was gone, so you didn't have to take him. Hey.
And then I had to go with my token Keenan Allen Charger guy.
Yeah, the only running backs that were really available there were Josh Jacobs and DeAndre Swift that went there. So you know, I mean, going the way you went, that was probably the smart move to do, right?
Yeah, like once you lose up on that, we've talked about that. I think even we did a podcast earlier in the season before the draft or during the draft time there, that when those backs go, you're kind of moving on to the third tier, if you will, and then it's like it doesn't matter after that, like the David Montgomerys, the stuff that's going to be hanging around, which Montgomery was great this year, but you're looking at him at like 39 and 42 and stuff like that. And so it's like, no, if I can get guys, Keenan Allen, actually, I believe this stat is still correct. Like, I believe that in the last 5 seasons, he has the most receptions collectively of any wide receiver. So that to me just means, hey, there's touchdowns in there. And so that was a fairly safe pick for me at that spot.
Yeah, that was great. Interesting. We both miffed on Cooper Kupp.
I know.
You know what I mean? I mean, now where's Cooper Kupp get drafted next year?
Well,
is he a first round pick at the end?
I don't know if I think that if any wide receiver is a first round pick, it's going to be that close stuff. So I think that what he does, I think he slips into that pack. I think he almost replaces maybe where people are concerned about Stephon Diggs at this point. They didn't get the production they wanted out of him, but the Tyreek Hill, the Devontae Adams, and now Cooper Kupp has to be going to that top 3 or 4 kind of where he actually fits. I don't know. I'm thinking like 11 to 17 or 18 kind of space in there. Whatever.
That's incredible. And we could have got him in the 5th round, 6th round.
Well, that's the thing is you and I talked about this a lot, right? And the question was, in the end, are you taking Robert Woods or are you taking Cooper Kupp? Well, we both were like, no questions asked, hands down, that's the way you go with it. But he was never there again. So on this draft in particular, I pick at 32 with Keenan Allen and feel super good about that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't pick again until 49. So Cooper Kupp was gone 8 picks ago. So there wasn't any chance of getting him there.
And I loved your Dak Prescott pick at 5. You and I both gambled on Ronald Jones. I thought he was the starter in Tampa Bay. When I got him, whatever round I got him in, I was super excited about that. Boy, was I wrong.
Well, the interesting thing about fantasy is that we never get that option. So what we don't see is practice. The dude's fumbling all over the place. He's fumbling balls he doesn't even have. He's holding the ball on the sideline and drops it. We don't get to see that part, and the coach is going, "Oh snap!"
Exactly. Yeah, and we've seen the fumbles, but you got him round 8? So that's not so bad. But the steal of the draft for you was 2 players, and it was in round 9, Deebo Samuels. Oh my goodness, he's got to be your MVP of the year
for sure. And I have him. I think there's I was in a number of leagues, and I think there's only 2 that I don't have Deebo in because I could get him super late and he was extraordinary. And the other guy that I was keying on this year was Joe Burrow, who didn't necessarily pay off in the first 8 weeks.
Right.
But man, last 4 weeks of the season, the guy, he's QB1. So
yeah, I mean, he's fantastic. So those were the 2 big boys there that kind of put you over the top.
Sorry, what was the second one you were thinking of?
Was Burrow. Yeah,
Burrow
was I mean, of course, having Prescott was incredible as well at times.
Yeah.
Also horrible at times too. You and I talked extensively about challenges. And you and I both drafted, get this, Dak Prescott, Burrow, and Ronald Jones.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Actually, it's like the Chargers score.
Yeah, exactly.
31-28. Yeah, that's where we're good.
That is so funny. So we ended up doing all that kind of stuff together. Actually, we also drafted Ingram. And did you get Marquise Brown too? No, you didn't. Did you?
No, I did not in this league.
Oh yeah, but so we drafted 4 players the same. No, 5 because we also got Kelsey together. So man, great. Right. Maybe there's a reason why we're winning because we think alike. I don't know.
Let's just say this. You asked me earlier about where does who is the player? Oh, so we were talking about Cooper Kupp. Deebo Samuel. So next year draft stuff, Deebo's got to be top 25 because he is so dynamic. Like he's playing that part of kind of that hybrid. The guy's getting more carries than he is receptions sometimes. So it's like that guy is going to get you touches, and he's dynamic when he gets his touches. So even if the touchdowns aren't there, you're talking 159, 163, 168 yards per game. And then when he throws a touchdown in, I mean, you're talking 24, 25 points.
And what's interesting about your season especially is because the way you drafted, you did go wide receiver heavy. In fact, you really struggled with your running backs, where running backs are very valued in our leagues.
Yes.
So there were times where you were like, well, who do I start here? And you had so much authority.
100%. Oh, but for sure. I was all.
You didn't have the perfect season, right? You had the struggling season. Yep. And then you had you made the playoffs, and then you had an incredible playoff. So tell me about that.
Absolutely. So for me, one of the things that what we're doing is we're going into it, and in my opinion, what fantasy is and why no one's an actual expert at it is that what you do is you give yourself the best chance to score as many points as you can. Doesn't mean you're going to score the points, because like in your final, you guys didn't score a ton of points, but the options of scoring that you could have also scored 130 and not been surprised.
Right.
So it's almost like you play the percentages of the players who are going to get you the points. So as I went through my draft, by the way, Raheem Mostert, who I thought was going to have a really great season in San Francisco, was injured, of course, at the beginning of the season. And that's a running back spot that I, again, lost some depth in. As you go through it, you're kind of looking at playoffs. The way that I went through it was I was drafting and pulling defenses that were going to play in weeks 14, 15, and 16. So I was looking at those players and their matchups, and that's who I was picking up on waivers. I wasn't going with the hot hand, the guy that just had the great week. I was going with those guys, with the exception of a fellow who actually probably helped win my league for me. In fact, did help win my league for me, Rashad Penny in Seattle.
Yeah.
And so we've been waiting for this guy, and I was super high on him. I've drafted him 2 years in a row at the end of my draft, thinking this guy's going to take over the Seattle backfield. Because Carson's always hurt. We know Carson's hurt, right? And so, but that guy turned things around for me because, he had the one down week there, but in his last 4 weeks, he scored 24 points or more 3 of 4 times. Wow. And in the final, scoring 30 in non-PPR leagues. So, you're talking probably scored 34 to 36 in PPR, like insane. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was definitely your playoff MVP, right? He had 30 points in your final.
Yeah. So if you would have told me, so here it is right here. This is fantasy, dude. If there is any definition of craziness in fantasy, Rashad Penny, who I picked up on waivers, I believe in week 11 or 12, scored more points for me in the final than Saquon Barkley and Travis Kelce combined.
Wow.
And
all the research we do and all the things we do and all the knowledge we have.
My first 2 picks got outscored by one guy, and by like 7 or 8 points too, that I picked up on waivers in week 12. Fantasy 101.
Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. So you were the 7th seed and knocked off Randy, who was number 2. I felt like your 2 teams were the strongest and should have been in the finals together, but then, matchups come up, and Randy would have beaten everybody except for one other team in that first week.
I thought Randy's team was better. Let's just be real. If you looked at it on paper, I thought Randy's team was better. And just, you have that thing in fantasy too, where you look at his players and you go, that guy just didn't perform. That guy just didn't perform. That guy just didn't perform. And that is fantasy. So I had a few of those weeks during the regular season. Unfortunately for Randy, it happens in the first week of the playoffs.
Right. And he didn't have a bad week. Like, if you think about it, he had 4 stud running backs, right? So he went the running back heavy. Najee Harris had 26 for him. Jonathan Taylor, who'd been probably one of the fantasy MVPs of the year, had 17, which is really good, but not as good. But Damian Harris had 16, who was in his flex, and Elijah Mitchell had 19, who was on his bench. Like, This is crazy, but his
for
wide
sure.
receivers failed him miserably.
Killed him. Yeah.
Absolutely killed him. But he picked up the Saints defense that got 15 points. So that's why he would have beaten everybody else except for Ed's disc golf. That still a hilarious name, but anyways, you're right. Randy had an incredible team. I thought he was poised to go far, but you
thought he drafted well. All of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So then next week, interesting, in the semifinal, you end up beating Scott's Beach Whales 98-88. And Scott ends up being the third best team in the league. So basically, you take out the number 2 team, you take out the number 3 team, and like this is like legit. I don't care that you're now number 7. You're walking into the final against the Hogs, who is ranked 4th, who shouldn't have won week 1 because he played hooked on a Thielen who had 37 points and he had only 70. He would have lost to almost everyone else in week 1.
Fantasy right there, baby.
Are you kidding me right now? Like, well done,
Thielen's
Paul,
team
kinda?
wasn't Thielen's team wasn't my favorite in the league if I looked at it on paper, but 37 points, that's unfortunate. Like you could never say that would happen.
Yeah, you couldn't put another team together and get 36.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when I was going in the final, sorry, Trev.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I was going in the final, what I wanted to make sure of is that I didn't leave any defenses on the board. I knew who I was going to start. So I actually, at the end of the season for the last week, I had 4 defenses on my roster, and I took the best defenses in their matchup so that Paul couldn't pick them up. So that was a little bit more strategy that I went to there because he had Philly playing as a defense, and I didn't like that matchup at all. So I just took the other 2 defenses that he might upgrade to. And then I think that Philly actually got him 9 points or something, or 8 points. So it wasn't
6.
a horrible.
Yeah, I got him 6. So
6. So it wasn't a horrible choice, but it was like I made sure that I picked up Tennessee and San Francisco. Ended up starting San Francisco, and Tennessee would have been a slightly better choice for me, but I did make sure that he wasn't open to sort of changing his mind last minute and picking up a defense that might do something for him.
Yeah, and that's really great strategy, right? And your team was on fire. I mean, like Burrow had 34 by himself. Like Penny had 30, as we just talked about. So it really, like, you basically won it with those 2 guys and having good strategy. So
yeah. So Burrow the last 2 weeks went 509, I believe, and 4. And then the last week, I believe for me, he went for 424 or 434 and 4. So, in saying that, talk about poor decisions. I was in another final of a money league, and I had to choose between starting Keenan Allen or starting Jamar Chase. And of course, Jamar Chase in that week, I scored 11 with Keenan Allen, and I would have scored 50 with Jamar Chase. I lost, needless to say.
Oh my goodness, dude. That's
fantasy.
Crazy. Hindsight 2020. Well, good thing is in minor league, you scored 123 in the final. It wasn't close. 123-87. You're the champ. You're moving up. You get first choice of which team that you get, and whatever team you pick, you get either the first or second pick, depending on which team you pick.
Absolutely. 1 year away from the show was too much, brother. Come on now.
Yeah, 1 full season. So, or is it more than 1? I don't know. 2 years.
It's just 1.
Okay, great. So good to have you back. Good to have Paul in the league with us as well. He's the first ever champion that we've had. In fact, I think he's got 3 championships in the leagues. So he's no one's fool.
He ends up showing up, right?
He knows his stuff. So looking forward to having him compete as well. It's going to be super competitive. Speaking of the show, I'm so thankful that I won because honestly, like Sheepdog and I probably had the 2 best teams, but he whoa, I got to edit that COVID cough out. Awkward.
Post-COVID.
He had he had the best team coming in. I had the second best team coming in, and we made the finals together.
Nice.
And so that's kind of a cool story, right? But the final was honestly disappointing. Both our teams, like as you said, just did not produce. I won 81-78, and it comes down to Nick Chubb on Monday Night Football needing 3 points. And I'm like, he's going to get COVID.
Yeah.
It's going to be rolled out of the game. I was looking to pick up Dearness Johnson off of waivers just in case. Of course, Vic's Doggy Daycare has him already. And I'm like, if he doesn't play, I'm hooped. So I was literally like scouring the line, looking at Pittsburgh players, going, if he doesn't go, am I picking up Snell and hoping that he gets me 3 points? Like, you got to think about
goal
that,
line
right?
carry, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And so, man.
Well, the other part of it is that when you have Chubb going into that like that, and you know that he's starting all of a sudden, you go, oh, okay, well, I'm probably going to win by 15 or 16. And Chubb scores what, 7 in that?
5.2. Like, really, like, I'm so glad I didn't need 10. You know what I mean?
On, man.
Like, how disappointing that would have been. But
so your draft, tell me about your draft. Like when you say that your team looks entirely different than what you drafted. So when you drafted, what were the kind of the 4 players that you thought were like gonna, and whether they made it or not, that you thought were gonna be your studs? And did it end up that way?
My two keepers are Chubb and Kelsey, who obviously
pretty easy
became my studs. But when the draft came to me, I had a choice between David Montgomery and James Robinson, and I was really struggling with that pick because I liked them both. Yeah. Now, I did not know that James Robinson was going to do what he did. Like, he was terrible. That was an awful pick. So I picked the right move by going Montgomery, who also during the year did struggle. So, and
he was injured for a few games there as well,
right.
Which doesn't.
And
help.
I think that's where the struggle came in, right? Yeah. So I was very, very happy to have picked him up. He had 17 points his first week, and week 4 he had 22. But he only had a couple weeks where he ended up getting 20, but most of them were like 8 or less.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the greatest year. It's just at that spot, I'm thankful I got him over who else.
He was stable, right?
Yeah, and that's what I was looking for at the number 2 spot, right?
Yep.
Number 4 was AJ Brown, which I was so awesome at pick 33 to get AJ Brown. Are you kidding me? And then he had a horrific year of injuries.
Wow. Really tough.
And then actually, let me talk about remind me about AJ Brown for the final, because this is crazy.
Okay.
But I went Dak Prescott like you did on round 5. I was very thrilled about that. I think I made a mistake there, but I was pumped personally. But round 6, I was so thrilled to get Adam Thielen. I've been on the Adam Thielen hype.
You like Adam Thielen?
I love Adam Thielen.
I'm just kidding, bro.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were being serious. So the thing that I like about Adam Thielen is that he's touchdown. Like, everyone's saying, oh, he's touchdown and penalty. I'm like, yeah, but he catches them. It's like him and Adams are scoring touchdowns. I don't. So
he finishes the season with what, 12?
I think he ends the season with 10, and he had a bunch of injuries at the end. So personally, I think he would have ended up with more.
Right.
It is what it is, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh, it's great value at that pick, right?
Yes. Getting a guy like Thielen at 6, I was pumped about. Now, going into next year, is he going to be around then? Probably. I don't know what's going to happen in the draft. But I went the Ronald Jones, the Hawkinson. I couldn't believe Hawkinson is still around. And the reason why that's an important one is because I was able to trade him later for something significant.
Right. Huge.
So those were my big moves. I picked A.J. Dillon in the 10th round just because I didn't know if Aaron Jones was going to stay healthy. And I'm thinking, man, I never gave up on that guy. I just kept him on my roster. There were times where I started him. He helped me to win a week or 2.
Yep.
And so that was really helpful. But, I mean, the rest of it, I was sold on Tampa Bay defense in the 12th round because I knew that their last 3 weeks were going to be amazing. And, of course, until they faced the Jets in the final. But anyways, that's another story for another day. So those are kind of the big themes. I guess the bigger theme for me would have been my trades.
Yeah. Well, before you go to your trades, let's touch on that for a sec. But before you go to your trades, something that's important that we both did, and this is an important thing to note. I would not usually take Dak Prescott in round 5. Okay. That wasn't my typical strategy. It's not that it was a bad thing to do, but what's important, both you and I did it. And the reason that I did it, and I'm assuming the reason that you did it, when you're on the snake and you have another pick coming up right away, you're going, I might not get to a quarterback for 18 picks. So all these quarterbacks could be gone if I don't take mine with this pick. So that for me, that was my strategy. It wasn't that I was thrilled about taking Dak in 5. It's that I wanted the best quarterback available because I felt like in the next 20 picks, if I didn't take Dak, that at least 4 of them were disappearing. Right. And then you're forced to put your money on a guy like Joe Burrow to say, he's my starter, he's my stud.
Yeah.
I ran into that in another league with Ryan Tannehill, and I was like, never again. I like, don't get me wrong, he's a solid quarterback, but that was so. Anyway, just to touch on that, we both did the same strategy.
Good point, actually, I loved how you said that. Let's just look at. So you got him in what, round 5 or 6? No,
but then in 5, but then I had the turn.
So who went after him? Rodgers, Wilson. Before it got back to you, no, you could have got, no, you had to go Gaskin there. You went Gaskin. I mean, you would have got Gaskin anyways. So,
yep.
Yeah. I mean, hindsight 2020. I mean, you could have picked Russell Wilson. That would have been terrible.
That's what I mean. Is so you're left with that thing, and if you have a good feeling about a quarterback, so like if in that position, if I'm getting Josh Allen. I would have taken him instead of Prescott. But if Kyler was around, I would have taken him instead of Dak at that point.
Yeah, Kyler went right before him.
Yeah, and so that's you start to get that. You go, so anyway, not to say it's a good pick. I'm thrilled with the pick in that sense. But the reason that I took him that early, if I was in the middle of the draft picking at 5 or 4 or 6 or something like that, I probably would have waited at least another round. So anyway, just putting that.
Interesting. If you and I waited till round 7 to pick a quarterback,
yeah,
we could have gotten Herbert and Brady.
And I loved Herbert the whole way. You know me, I'm a Herbie fan. Seriously, he is going to be a star in this league. I just didn't know if if he would have been around there for me to take at backup, I would have taken him for sure before Burrow actually. And so, the way that the draft works out, you just go, okay, well, I can't take my second quarterback right now. I need to get some more depth at running back, especially with my running back position being poor at that point in the draft. So you're kind of like, you're balancing what it is, anyway, but you're absolutely right. Hindsight in drafts is always like, I mean, I took Debo in so many leagues, and I don't think that I ever took him earlier than 80th. And you go, hey, you want to talk about draft value? That guy is, but I have him in 18 of 20 leagues. For sure. So
okay, so in trades, there was a ton of trades. A lot of them were me because I just love to trade, and Sheepdog loves to trade as well. One of the biggest ones happened right away was Zeke Elliott for Devontae Adams right off the bat, which I was not a fan of that deal, but it actually worked out for Up and Adams for a long time to get Zeke Elliott. He wanted that running back. And you know me, what I think about Devontae Adams, but the one that failed, Sheepdog.
That's a different show, by the way.
Pardon me?
That's a whole different show, by the way.
Yeah, no kidding. But if you think about it, the one that failed was Sheepdog made a trade with Purple People Eaters, and Purple People Eaters ended up winning this by a landslide. Get this. So Sheepdog gets Metcalf and Carson, and Purple People Eaters, Ruben gets Chase and Hunt.
Oh.
And how does Ruben not make the playoffs?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, that was a monster deal.
If Hunt stayed healthy, like the whole time, it was those 5 weeks of Hunt not being healthy, and that's like that player not even getting on the field. Oh, but I mean, you're right. And the thing is that Chase was really good, but like 3 of the last 4 weeks, like the prime time, that guy was unbelievable. Yeah, that is super. Who would have said that about Metcalf, right? No. Because Metcalf is right there when you're early draft, from what I remember, and I'm trying to remember
top 7.
But you're going Metcalf, Jefferson, and AJ Brown are kind of in that group, DeAndre Hopkins, I think, was around at 18 or 19 or something like that. So those 4 guys, you're going, if I get one of those guys, I'm okay.
And I'm probably taking Metcalf before all those guys anyways.
For me, it's Hopkins, but Metcalf's right behind him.
Yeah.
And Justin Jefferson, I know he's good, but it wasn't, I was like, you know what? He's there, but I wasn't sold that he was going to do the same thing that he did the season before.
Okay, so October 6th, I pull off a monster deal. Talked about this on the show a lot. But Knuckle Draggers needed a running back, right? So I sent him James Conner, but get this. I sent him James Conner, Sam Darnold, who was actually playing well at the time. Not, we're not saying he's God's gift to football, but and Marquise Brown, who was on fire, and Randall Cobb. Get this. 4. Okay, we'll start with the worst first. Gainwell, I got. Jalen Hurts, who ended up being one of the best quarterbacks in the fantasy. Leonard Fournette, who I didn't think was going to be great. I knew he was a starter, but I didn't know. I didn't know he was going to be Leonard Fournette. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Cooper Kupp.
That
trade probably won me the league, because the reason why is I took Jalen Hurts and Fournette and packaged them up together and traded for Patrick Mahomes and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So that was probably one of the moves that helped me to compete in the playoffs. And then Mike, our champ, Dr. Z, needed a running back badly. So I traded him Thielen and Sanders for Jefferson. And most people are like, why would he do that? That's ridiculous. Well, honestly, there's not a big difference between Thielen and Jefferson, and he needed a running back. I know I didn't give him a great running back, but when you're desperate and you think you're not going to make the playoffs, that put him into the playoff picture and got him to win. In fact, Sherlock Mahomes making that trade with me for Hurts and Fournette got him into the playoffs, and he came 3rd. So those trades that people were criticizing and saying, why would someone do this? It actually worked out in their favor. Now, they didn't win. I mean, Sherlock Mahomes should have won. He should have won the whole league. Like how he didn't.
Well, it's just, again, fantasy, right? And your points, when you look at your points at the end of the season and you look at what you score in week 16, it doesn't matter because you got to where you were, and that's the week that you win. But those things, when it's always easy to say, and something that's really interesting for me is anytime that I'm going to go into trades or go into the waiver wire or stuff like that, people that are looking ahead, it's not about, if you're in week 12 for the waiver wire, it's not about who's going to win you week 13. It's going to be who wins me week 15 and 16 if I get there. So like picking up defenses and stuff on like my next week's matchup, you like be ahead of yourself, like carry another defense, because there's that guy that's been sitting on your bench that you have no intention of starting. And then you can be ahead of the waiver wire to get those kinds of players. So it sounds like those players are making those choices saying, hey, this guy's got a great matchup. If you think about Sanders, you're looking at Sanders in the playoffs going, he's got 2 great matchups for the semifinal and final for me. And if he gets half of those carries, that's a great flex. So he's making the right decision. And, if it works out better slightly for points for somebody, it was like, why would he make that? Well, at the time, it made a ton of sense.
And if Thielen didn't get hurt, he would have gotten more points and Jefferson would have got less.
Absolutely.
So that's the whole thing. So get this. Okay. So week 1, Sherlock Mahomes, Steve gets 84 points, had a pretty good week, would have beat a lot of teams, but he got the right matchup. Up and Adams' team just stunk. But because of the way that the matchups worked, it went by bracket and not by reseeding. And if he would have went by reseeding, which Sheepdog wanted him to reseed, Sherlock Mahomes would have beat Sheepdog in the semifinal, 104-101. So then he would have went to the final against me and would have won 93-81.
Wow.
So, and he had a horrific year of injuries, dude, like insanely bad year of injuries. He was always texting me, he's out. Like his big thing was he had Deebo Samuels and then he picked up Singletary and played him in those final few weeks Fournette got him those 37-point weeks and all that kind of stuff. That was amazing. But man, his team overall was solid and would have won. And that is fantasy for you. You know what I mean? You've got to be able to put yourself in an opportunity to compete so you can contend, so that you can win a championship. And just the way it bounced, I got that win, right?
Oh, for sure. And in another league that I was in, I have this killer team, and I score 129, and I didn't even think my team performed that well. The other guy who finished below me in the league, that week his team goes off and he scores 157. I was like, what do you do? Like, that's a great win for him. Right? Like, that's as good as I got this week, man. So it's all good. So again, that's the way it goes. And people who enjoy fantasy understand that you're giving yourself the best opportunity, but because you have the best team on paper, any given Sunday, right? It doesn't matter.
And big deal to win a championship. Doesn't matter what league you're in. I mean, I guess in a public league, it's not like, oh yay, you know. But in leagues where people know what they're doing, I think it's always something to sit back and go, you know what, that was an awesome run. And you know me, I'm the show guy. That's the league I want to win.
I know you do.
But there's no money in it. But this win was special for me because it became my fourth win, and it tied me with Randy, who's been the greatest fantasy winner in our league, and I'm there now with him. And in fact, I think I'm better. But that's just my personal.
We'll start off 2022.
You crushed him, and so he's still in minor league. And I mean, I've got the best chance of winning number 5 than he does at the moment, right? So, you know,
there are certain people that you play with, and we've played with Randy in fantasy football leagues for years and stuff like that. There's certain people that you just play that you really like to beat, and Randy's a really good owner. So when you get a win over him, or you knock him out or something like that, he knows his stuff. And so it's like, that's a good, you know, you go, hey, I'm good with that. That's okay. So 4 championships, I'm pretty pumped about that. That's awesome, buddy. Congrats.
I don't mean to be flexing, but man, I just want to sit back and go, wow, that's pretty special. I mean, it wasn't that spectacular final that I was hoping for. When I think my first championship, I beat Monty, and he had D'Angelo Williams, and D'Angelo Williams scored 3 touchdowns for him. But I believe in that same game, they were playing the Giants, and I had Brandon Jacobs, and he scored 4 touchdowns.
That is hilarious.
It was like I was watching the game like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Oh, I can win. I'm going to lose. I'm going to win. You know what I mean? Like that. And then I remember another time, another championship, Antonio Brown, I believe, had the ball and reached over for a 2-point conversion, ended up sealing the deal for me. It was like super exciting. This one was like, Nick Chubb, come on, get me 3 fantasy points.
So for any of you young adults who are watching this podcast and saying, D'Angelo who? Brandon what?
They were amazing.
Trev's first championship was a little while ago.
Yeah, they know who AB is apparently.
No, of course. Yeah.
2 jumping jacks off the field while
like
being injured.
Jacobs. Oh, that is awesome, man.
And usually that's why I have this Brandon Jacobs jersey, is because it was my first one. It was such a winning way. So I'm like, so if I bought a jersey now from this championship, who do I get?
You get the guy you traded for. You don't have a Cooper Kupp jersey, brother.
Well, it would be Cooper Kupp, or it would be Mahomes or someone. Or
you guys are similar in stature. You'd look perfect in
it. Yeah. So anyways, if you've stayed around for this long, God bless you. You are a saint. But I hope that you've really enjoyed some of the conversation, thought process. There's a lot to fantasy that goes into it, and we put a lot of time and thought into it. And it takes a lot to win it. It takes luck for sure, because it's educated guessing for sure.
Yep.
But we love it. We love that everyone that's been in these leagues, you guys have been fantastic. Love being a part of the leagues with you. And any final thoughts, Peter, before we sign off?
Yeah, you know what? It takes a group of guys to make a league really fun and really great. So I am heading up to the show along with Paul And that's fantastic. But there are some really good owners in the league, and I know that I'm just joining a bunch of good owners up there. So to everybody that didn't win, it's great. Like, it's wonderful when you're on the mountaintop and that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of good owners that had good opportunities to win, that drafted well, that strategized well, and stuff like that. That's our game. And thank you to everybody in our leagues, wherever you finished, because it's a pleasure playing with you and it's a pleasure hanging out with you and stuff like that. So thank you so much to everybody.
Yep. So here's the championship episode. Peter Day, Rev Trev signing off. Go Pack, go. And we're cheering for the Chargers Sunday night.
Chargers Sunday night game, baby.